Spring rain, rain of light that saturated every new leaf of the trees in the street, every square of paving drift of rain, threading light through the empty darkness itself, and the ball in the Palais Royal. The king and queen were there dancing with the people, talk in the shadows of intrigue, who cares? Kingdoms rise and fall, just don't burn the paintings in the Louvre, that's all. Lost in a sea of mortals again, fresh complexions and ruddy cheeks, mounds of powdered hair, atop feminine heads with all manner of millinery nonsense. In them, even minute ships with 3 masts, tiny trees, little birds. Landscapes of pearl and ribbon, broad-chested men, like cocks in satin coats, like feathered wings. The diamonds hurt my eyes, the voices touched the surface of my skin. At times the laughter, the echo of unholy laughter, wreaths of candles blinding, the froth of music positively lapping the walls, gusts of rain from the open doors, scent of humans gently stoking my hunger, white shoulders, white necks, powerful hearts, running at that eternal rhythm, so many gradations. Among these naked children hidden in riches, savages laboring beneath a swaddling of chenille, encrustations of embroidery, feet aching over high heels, masks like scabs about their eyes. The air comes out of one body and is breathed into another. The music, does it pass out of one ear and into another? As the old expression goes, we breathe the light, we breathe the music, we breathe the moment as it passes through us. Now and then eyes settled on me with some vague air of expectation. My white skin made them pause, but what was that when they let blood out of their veins themselves to keep their delicate pallor? Let me hold the basin for you and drink it afterwards. And my eyes, what were those in this sea of paste jewels? Yet their whispers slithered around me, and those scents, not a one was like another. And as clearly as if spoken aloud it came, the summons from mortals here and there sensing what I was, and the lust. In some ancient language they welcomed death, they ached for death as death was passing through the room. But did they really know? Of course they didn't know, and I did not know. That was the perfect horror, and who am I to bear this secret, to hunger so to impart it, to want to take that slender woman there, and suck the blood right out of the plump flesh of her round little breast? The music rushed on, human music. The colors of the room flamed for an instant, as if the whole world would melt. The hunger sharpened, it was no longer an idea. My veins were throbbing with it, someone would die. Sucked dry in less than a moment, I cannot stand it, thinking of it, knowing it's about to happen, fingers on the throat, feeling the blood in the vein. Feeling the flesh give it to me. Where? This is my body, this is my blood. Send out your power. Lestat, like a reptile tongue to gather and afflict the appropriate heart. Plump little arms ripe for the squeezing, men's faces, on which the close-shaven blonde beard all but glitters, muscle struggling in my fingers. You haven't got a chance. And beneath this divine chemistry suddenly, this panorama of the denial of decay, I saw the bones. Skulls under these preposterous wigs, 2 gaping holes peering from behind the uplifted fan. A room of wobbling skeletons waiting only for the tolling of the bell, just as I had seen the audience that night in the pit of Renaud's, when I had done the tricks that terrified them. The horror should be visited upon every other being in this room. I had to get out. I'd made a terrible miscalculation. This was death, and I could get away from it if I could just get out. But I was tangled in mortal beings, as if this monstrous place were a snare for a vampire. If I bolted, I'd send the entire ballroom into panic. As gently as I could, I pushed to open the doors. And against the far wall, a backdrop of satin and filigree, I saw out of the corner of my eye, like something imagined, Armand. Armand. If there had been a summons, I never heard it. If there was a greeting, I didn't sense it now. He was merely looking at me, a radiant creature in jewels and scalloped lace. And it was Cinderella revealed at the ball, this vision, Sleeping Beauty opening her eyes under a mesh of cobwebs and wiping them all away with one sweep of her warm hand. The sheer pitch of incarnate beauty made me gasp. Yes, perfect mortal raiment, and yet he seemed all the more supernatural, his face too dazzling, his dark eyes fathomless, and just for a split second, glinting as if they were windows to the fires of hell, And when his voice came, it was low and almost teasing, forcing me to concentrate, to hear it all night. "You've been searching for me," he said, "and here I am, waiting for you. I have been waiting for you all along." I think I sensed even then, as I stood unable to look away, that never in my years of wandering this earth would I ever have such a rich revelation of the true horror that we are. Heartbreakingly innocent, he seemed in the midst of the crowd. Yet I saw crypts when I looked at him, and I heard the beat of the kettle drums. I saw torchlit fields where I had never been, heard vague incantations, felt the heat of raging fires on my face. And they didn't come out of him, these visions. Rather, I drew them out on my own, yet never had Nicholas, mortal or immortal, been so alluring. Never had Gabrielle held me so in thrall. Dear God, this is love, this is desire, and all my past amours have been but the shadow of this. And it seemed in a murmuring pulse of thought he gave me to know that I had been very foolish to think it would not be so. "Who can love us, you and I, as we can love each other?" he whispered, and it seemed his lips actually moved. Others looked at him. I saw them drifting with a ludicrous slowness. I saw their eyes pass over him. I saw the light fall on him at a rich new angle as he lowered his head. I was moving towards him. It seemed he raised his right hand and beckoned, and then he didn't. And he had turned, and I saw the figure of a young boy ahead of me. With narrow waist and straight shoulders and high firm calves under silk stockings, a boy who turned as he opened a door and beckoned again. A mad thought came to me. I was moving after him, and it seemed that none of the other things had happened. There was no crypt under Les Innocents, and he had not been that ancient fearful fiend. We were somehow safe. We were the sum of our desires, and this was saving us, and the vast untasted horror of my own immortality did not lie before me, and we were navigating calm seas with familiar beacons, and it was time to be in each other's arms. Our dark room surrounded us, private, cold. The noise of the hall was far away. He was heated with the blood he'd drunk, and I could hear the strong force of his heart. He drew me closer to him, and beyond the high windows there flashed the passing lights of the carriages, with dim incessant sounds that spoke of safety and comfort and all the things that Paris was. I had never died. The world was beginning again. I put out my arms and felt his heart against me. And calling out to my Nicholas, I tried to warn him, to tell him we were all of us doomed. Our life was slipping inch by inch from us, and seeing the apple trees in the orchard, drenched in green sunlight, I felt I would go mad. "No, no, my dearest one," he was whispering, "nothing but peace and sweetness, and your arms in mine. You know it was the damnedest luck," I whispered suddenly. "I am an unwilling devil. I cry like some vagrant child. I want to go home. Yes, yes," his lips tasted like blood, but it was not human blood. It was that elixir that Magnus had given me, and I felt myself recoil. I could get away this time. I had another chance. The wheel had turned full round. I was crying out that I wouldn't drink, and then I felt the two hot shafts driven hard through my neck and down to my soul. I couldn't move. It was coming as it had come that night, the rapture, 1,000-fold what it was when I held mortals in my arms, and I knew what he was doing. He was feeding upon me, he was draining me, and going down on my knees, I felt myself held by him, the blood pouring out of me. With a monstrous volition, I couldn't stop. "Devil!" I tried to scream. I forced the word up and up until it broke from my lips and the paralysis broke from my limbs. "Devil!" I roared again, and I caught him in his swoon and hurled him backwards to the floor. In an instant I had my hands upon him, and shattering the French doors, had dragged him out with me into the night. His heels were scraping on the stones, his face had become pure fury. I clutched his right arm and swung him from side to side, so that his head snapped back, and he could not see nor gauge where he was nor catch hold of anything, and with my right hand I beat him until the blood was running out of his ears and his eyes and his nose. I dragged him through the trees away from the lights of the Palais, and as he struggled, as he sought to resurrect himself, with a burst of force, he shot his declaration at me that he would kill me because he had my strength now. He drunk it out of me, and coupled with his own strength, it would make him impossible to defeat. Maddened, I clutched at his neck, pushing his head down against the path beneath me. I pinned him down, strangling him until the blood in great gushes poured out of his open mouth. He would have screamed if he could. My knees drove into his chest. His neck bulged under my fingers, and the blood spurted and bubbled out of him. And he turned his head from side to side, his eyes growing bigger and bigger, but seeing nothing. And then when I felt him weak and limp, I let him go. I beat him again, turning him this way and that. And then I drew my sword to sever his head. Let him live like that if he can. Let him be immortal like that if he can. I raised the sword, and when I looked down at him, the rain was pelting his face, and he was staring up at me as one half alive, unable to plead for mercy, unable to move. I waited. I wanted him to beg. I wanted him to give me that powerful voice, full of lies and cunning, the voice that had made me believe for one pure and dazzling instant that I was alive and free, and in the state of grace again. Damnable, unforgivable lie I'd never forgot. For as long as I walked the earth, I wanted the rage to carry me over the threshold to his grave. But nothing came from him, and in this moment of stillness and misery for him, his beauty slowly returned. He lay a broken child on the gravel path, only yards from the passing traffic, the ring of horses' hooves, the rumble of the wooden wheels. And in this broken child were centuries of evil and centuries of knowledge, and out of him there came no ignominious entreaty, but merely the soft and bruised sense of what he was. Old evil, yes, that had seen dark ages, of which I only dream. I let him go, and I stood up and sheathed my sword. I walked a few paces from him and collapsed upon a wet stone bench. Far away, busy figures labored about the shattered window of the palace, but the night lay between us, and those confused mortals and I looked at him listlessly as he lay still. His face was turned to me, but not by design, his hair a tangle of curls and blood, and with his eyes closed and his hand open beside him, he appeared the abandoned offspring of time and supernatural accident, someone as miserable as myself. What had he done to become what he was? Could one so young, so long ago, have guessed the meaning of any decision, let alone the vow to become this? I rose, and walking slowly to him, I stood over him and looked at him, at the blood that soaked his lace shirt and stained his face. It seemed, he sighed, that I heard the passage of his breath. He didn't open his eyes, and to mortals, perhaps, there would have been no expression there, but I felt his sorrow. I felt its immensity, and I wished I didn't feel it, and for one moment I understood the gulf that divided us, and the gulf that divided his attempt to overpower me from my rather simple defense of myself. Desperately he had tried to vanquish what he did not comprehend, and impulsively and almost effortlessly I had beaten him back. All my pain with Nicholas came back to me in Gabrielle's words and Nicholas's denunciations. My anger was nothing to his misery, his despair, and this perhaps was the reason that I reached down and gathered him up. And maybe I did it because he was so exquisitely beautiful and so lost, and we were after all of the same ilk. Natural enough, wasn't it, that one of his own should take him away from this place where mortals would sooner or later have approached him, driven him stumbling away. He gave no resistance to me. In a moment he was standing on his feet, and then he walked drowsily beside me, my arm about his shoulder, bolstering him and steadying him until we were moving away from the Palais Royal towards the Rue Saint-Honore. I only half glanced at the figures passing by until I saw a familiar shape under the trees, with no scent of mortality coming from it, and I realized that Gabrielle had been there for some time. She came forward hesitantly and silently, her face stricken when she saw the blood-drenched lace and the lacerations on his white skin, and she reached out as if to help me with the burden of him, though she did not seem to know how. Somewhere far off in the darkened gardens, the others were near. I heard them before I saw them. Nicky was there too. They had come as Gabrielle had come, drawn over the miles, it seemed, by the tumult or what vague messages I could not imagine, and they merely waited and watched as we moved away.